Have you ever gotten an early gank off? Solo killed your laner? Maybe even roamed ball lane and picked up some free kills? You recall and walk back onto the map with a solid lead, and then, now what? You're uncertain of how to make use of the lead you've just gained, and slowly it slips away over the next 5 to 10 minutes. Maybe you end up throwing at a dragon fight, and just like that, you're no longer ahead. Whether you're a bruiser top, aggressive jungler, or even a scaling carry, I'm going to teach you all of the things you'll need to know in order to successfully carry your advantages into victories. And more importantly, how to recognize situations and have an idea of what your game plan should be. Welcome to Playing with Purpose. First, it is very important to establish in our mind what the purpose of getting a lead is. A lead can come from several places. The most obvious example of a lead is killing your opponent. 300 gold and some XP feels pretty nice. But what a lot of people don't think about is the enemy respawn timer, minions they might miss, summoner spells used. All of these things add up to make it where getting a single early kill can change the pace of the early game entirely. For example, a top laner can solo kill their opponent, crash a wave, get an extra plate, then take a reset while the enemy top laner is then forced to teleport back to their lane. All of a sudden, that 300 gold snowballs into another 160 from a turret plate, roughly another 120 from the wave being pushed in, and finally a teleport advantage. The main thing from the teleport advantage is that you can now choose how to maintain your lead. You may teleport back to lane to keep applying pressure and look for more solo kills, or save it if you know the enemy team is looking to make plays on your bot lane. You can then show up for that while the enemy top laner cannot, in turn making your solo advantage into a team advantage. Being able to know what's best in any given game situation is the difference between good and great players. Most importantly to understand is, what even is the purpose of getting an early game advantage? You'll get to certain item spikes sooner, get to level thresholds faster, and be able to dictate the pace of the game, and most impactful of all is control the map. Not every champion that gets a kill in lane automatically wins off of it. The Ezreal that kills a Kai'Sa at level 4 can just as easily be killed when said Kai'Sa is level 6. But that same Ezreal, with the right understanding, can avoid the level 6 death and hit his 2 item spikes considerably sooner and outperform the Kai'Sa in mid-game teamfights, which is where the game is really decided. I'll be covering a lot more examples, but the main takeaway I want you to leave with from this video is to have the understanding and actively think about the decisions you're making in the games that you play. And over time, you'll tune your ability to read game states and avoid throwing the leads you work hard to build up. As somewhat touched on before, you need to be able to think about the bigger picture in terms of what getting a kill can turn into. Learn to turn your early ganks into objectives or team plays such as dives or invades to gain small advantages. You can turn something small like a single kill top at 3 minutes into a dive at 6 minutes and then a Rift Herald play at 12 minutes to take the tower. All of a sudden, you've turned a first blood into a 2k gold lead just off of knowing what to play for. Always be thinking of what comes next, because the game isn't over until the Nexus explodes. Through practice, you'll get in the habit of formulating plans ahead of time instead of reactively playing games out wherever your teammates ping you or where the enemy forces their own plays. You need to be in control of your own gameplay. Even if it isn't the most optimal game plan, sticking to one will teach you more over time and you'll improve way faster as a player. A small but good example of this is to actively deny your opponent resources whenever you gain a kill. Learning to set up a freeze, track and counter jungle enemy camps, or set up repeat dives are all valuable skills that we'll get into later that you'll need to learn how to maximize your punish game and increase your chances of winning games. In order to actually recognize and learn what plays you should be looking for in order to increase your lead, first you must learn the different kinds of plays you can make and know how to read the map in order to tell whether or not the risk you're about to take is worth it. When playing against smarter players, you won't just be able to force whatever plays you want for free. You'll be contested, fought, maybe even caught out when you weren't expecting it. So we'll go over some different examples of low risk and high risk plays and show the potential value of knowing when to go for each type of risk. Low risk plays are those that you either have good setup for or your opponents don't have a way to contest without automatically losing. Invading when you have laner priority, taking fights when you have direct advantages such as items, levels, or summoner spells over your opponents. These are just some of the ways to recognize when you have low risk plays that can push your advantages harder. A quick example of this would be if you've gained an early advantage as a jungler and you're up a level on the enemy jungler, you hit level 6 while they're still level 5, and off of that you choose to force a mid 2v2 while you have 2 ultimates available compared to the enemy's single ultimate. The more you're able to pick up on these small advantages will inherently have you forcing smarter plays that are less likely to backfire and give up the lead you've already gained. Now, high-risk plays are the ones that you look to force when you're confident in your ability to execute and skirmish correctly, and or have faith in your allies' ability to follow you up. These end up netting you much bigger rewards such as multiple kills, objectives, and control over the pace of the game. Going for roams, tower dives, teleport plays, starting objectives, these are the plays that have a clear start to them, but then player input and skill generally decides the outcome of. Smart players will do things in certain ways to make these as little a risk as possible, such as juggling tower aggro properly or layering crowd control correctly. But overall, these plays are not always guaranteed and can backfire if misplayed or outplayed. Rewards for these plays are much bigger though, so you'll see professional teams work on these plays to make sure that they make as little mistakes as possible to be coordinated and flawless in execution. While not as organized as pro play, you too can take the ideas of these plays and apply them to your own solo queue games or clash games. Choosing which types of risks to look for in a game is important because at the end of it, you're trying to aim towards a win condition. If you need to win early game versus a team comp that outscales you, then you'll need to be able to execute on aggressive high-risk plays in order to shut them down and end the game early. If you're a champion or team comp that is looking to make it to late game, then you'll likely be looking for low-risk plays that gain you small advantages, and if you mess up or your opponent outplays you on, you don't lose such a large advantage that you end up losing the entire game off of it. Mastering both of these playstyles will make you both a competent shot caller and decision maker in game, which is a heavily underappreciated skill that would take you far in the long run. Something we slightly touched on before and will be going more in depth on, tactically denying resources is extremely underutilized at lower levels of play, and is often the thing that makes leads in higher elos feel so much bigger. The average minion wave pre-15 minutes gives 125 gold. Knowing this as a laner, whenever you freeze a wave, deny minions, or slow stack waves to either force a dive or force the enemy off of the tower, you have a rough idea of how much of a tangible gold lead you're gaining in the early game. Once you get to the mid game, something you can also do when you have control over the map is deny enemy jungle camps as both a laner and a jungler. These become more valuable than taking your own camps, as taking one camp from the enemy's jungle represents +1 to you and -1 to your enemy, when simply taking one of your own camps is +1 to you and -0 to your enemy. Best times to look for this is whenever you're able to push out a wave on that side of the map or mid lane, then push into the enemy jungle while having your pushed wave give you vision. If you see someone catching that wave, then you're able to quickly take the enemy jungle camps. If you repeat this several times, you'll have starved the enemy team of a ton of golden XP, especially a jungler who will have nothing to farm. Now here's the part of the game that should be your main focus from the beginning. The way you actually gain LP and make the efforts of playing well turn it into something tangible. The best way to end up in a game closing position is by winning teamfights. The way you want to take teamfights most of the time is from a position of control. Generally, the way you want to take control of teamfights with a lead is by setting up vision around objectives and either choosing to collapse on the team as they check it, or by taking it if they don't contest you. The three main neutral objectives to play for are Dragons, Rift Heralds, and Baron. The purpose of each differs depending on what time of the game it is. Dragons are a long-term investment that only pays out if you remain in a position of game control to guarantee the Dragon Soul. Rift Herald is more of an immediate advantage, allowing you to sway the state of one side of the map to gain a gold lead and hopefully take a tower. And last is Baron, which is core to the mid and late game as an objective that allows you to siege much easier and gives the potential to close out a game if played properly. All of the intricacies of how to use these, play to them, and when to play around them are a subject for a whole nother video. Baseline for all three is that when you have an advantage from one or more lanes early, you're able to take the objectives of Herald and Dragon. Whereas mid to late game, certain team compositions exist with the main purpose of setting up around Baron with the damage to do it and the tools to engage a fight if the enemy team oversteps. Knowing whether you are playing to finish an objective and leave, or turn off of the objective and commit to a fight, is a decision that needs to be made before the play is started, otherwise you'll have people on different pages, and if you botch the play here, it's the easiest way to throw a game that was incredibly one-sided. Basically, it boils down to identifying your win condition. If your team scales well into the mid and late game, you must wait until your carries have their items before you start playing towards Baron. If your team has strong early aggression, you should control the first few dragons, and with that initial lead, look to gain the third and fourth dragon to get a huge advantage from the soul. If your team has pressure on top side of the map, or your support can roam, Rift Herald is a great objective to snowball one of your lanes and open up the map. Choosing a game plan is the hardest part, and sticking to it will give you and your team a sense of direction as the game plays out, so that you don't end up taking random fights or giving shutdowns, inevitably throwing your lead and eventually the game. Thanks for watching. I hope this video on concepts of high-elo competitive gameplay was both interesting and informative. This is part of a series I'd like to call Playing with Purpose, where I cover specific macro and gameplay concepts that I've learned from playing at a high competitive level and breaking them down in ways that people can learn from. If you'd like to see specific topics covered, feel free to request them in the comments and check out more of my videos as they come out.